Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to my... Wait, wrong live stream. Welcome, everyone, to another installment of BG Bios. Thank you for joining us. I will be your hostess with the mostest, Oni, also known as Oni in the Discord, and Oni Perfection here on Twitch, on this evening's rather interesting turn of events. On tonight's episode of BG Bios Meet the Mods Infinite Disco Edition, I will be flipping the script on our favorite host. If you in the audience have any questions during the interview, put them in the chat, and I will include them when I can. Now, be brave and don't look back. Dearest guest, tell us your name and your pronouns.
My name is Caleb. I'm known as Duban in the Discord, or King Nerd Boy is my secret Discord name when you click and look past the nickname. I don't really care about pronouns because they're an arbitrary function of language, but people usually use he or they, I think. I care about other people's pronouns if it's important to them, of course, but I don't care about mine.
How dare you be so controversial, yet so brave? And what are you playing for us this evening?
So I am playing Lego Star Wars. I'm playing the complete saga, but it's not really important because I probably won't make it halfway through episode 4. So it's basically Lego Star Wars 2.
All right, good to know. And moving on. We're going to get things warmed up with a few rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I need you to give me an answer as quickly as you can. Remember, your focus determines your reality. Ignoring COVID, if you would travel anywhere right now, where would you go?
Oh, that's too hard. Montreal, probably.
What's the best way to travel?
By train, if you can make it. If not, then by plane.
What's the cutest animal?
A koala.
What's your go-to song for karaoke?
What's the Bonnie Tyler song? Shit. I Need a Hero.
Yes. AC or fan in the summer?
AC all the way. I would rather actually be cooled down.
Okay. All right. Good. Collect yourself, and then we'll move on to the next batch.
Sounds good.
Who's your favorite animated character?
Ahsoka Tano.
Somehow I knew that. What's the all-time best video game character?
I've asked a million people this, and I don't know the answer. Darth Revan.
Okay. What's your favorite Appalachianism?
I like I'm smelling what you're stepping in, or I'm also a fan of do you have 2 shakes of a dog's tail? That's the one I say at work all the time, and people look at me like I've grown a second head.
Got it. What are you currently reading?
So I've actually been reading Drew Karpyshyn's like fantasy trilogy, which Drew Karpyshyn wrote Knights of the Old Republic and the first 2 Mass Effect games, but he's also written several novels recently since he left BioWare. So I've been reading those novels. They've been pretty good.
Autumn or winter?
Ooh, winter all the way. Though it's a hard choice because autumn's probably my second favorite.
I won't hold that against you. What's the best vegetable?
Ooh, carrots?
What's your favorite adult beverage?
Vodka.
Favorite food that you can make in the microwave?
Mug cake.
Yes. What's your favorite soda?
I don't drink soda much, but when I do, root beer is pretty good. I think it's probably my favorite.
Cake or pie?
Pie. This isn't even a question. I don't know why this is controversial. Anyone who thinks cake is just wrong.
And we're ending tonight's interview. Thank you very much.
I'll let the chat explode. I don't even care.
Oh my gods, they have opinions.
I'm sure.
What is your favorite meal?
Ooh, probably pizza. It's hard because I
Okay.
feel like it makes me a little bit sick, but it's my favorite when I'm eating it, so we'll go with that.
And do you have a standard Starbucks order?
I do. I just get a tall latte, which is the most boring thing imaginable. But or a grande latte usually, let's be honest. One shot is
Some
not
days
enough.
some days you need it more than others.
Indeed.
And now we'll venture into what made you.
Oh boy.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in southeastern Ohio in a town called Marietta, which was actually the first European American settlement in the Northwest Territory, which is like everything beyond Ohio. Basically what gets called the Midwest now, which is kind of a funny term. And that's where I grew up. It's a pretty small town. There's pretty much nothing in southeastern Ohio to speak of whatsoever. The only thing sometimes people know is Ohio University, which is in Athens. Even that was like an hour away from where I grew up, so it's not like super close.
It's close enough.
Yeah, compared to the next nearest thing, it's close.
What's the next nearest thing?
The next nearest thing people would know is probably Columbus, which is like 2.5 hours away, or maybe Cleveland is similarly distant.
Who all was in your household growing up? Have you any siblings?
I do. I'm the youngest of three, so my sister is the oldest, and then my brother, and then I'm a several years difference. So my sister and my brother are about a year apart, but I'm 4.5 years younger than my brother. So yeah. And I grew up with both of my parents in the house as well until I was a teenager, and my parents split, so I left with my mom.
Okay. We're not that different, you and I.
Indeed.
How would you describe your family to someone who doesn't know them? Which wouldn't be me.
It's funny, I wrote this question and it's like I don't know how to answer it. I would say, so my dad in particular is easy to start with because I'm essentially like a genetic and personality copy of my dad. We don't believe in any of the same things. My dad is pretty conservative and pretty religious, but like personality wise, you could like it basically be identical. Like pretty much anyone that likes me likes my dad. It's actually funny because like we don't get along at all because we're too much alike, but people who get along with one of us usually get along with both of us. My mom is like the polar opposite. My mother is like a very quiet, nice person, gets along with everyone, is just like a total sweetheart. Never like my mother would never like talk in front of people. That sort of thing would horrify her. She's just like a very sweet lady. My sister is probably like a mix of my mom and my dad. My brother is like more like my mom. So there's like a little bit of everything. I'm like my dad, my brother's like my mom, and my sister's kind of a mix of the two.
That's intriguing. But also a very roundabout way of telling people that you are not nice.
I mean, I don't think anyone was wondering. No, I mean, the thing that is true about my dad and I is that we're both direct. We both have kind of like a crass sense of humor. So we'll sort of like bother other people for amusement or what have you. And like both of us are pretty stubborn. You can't convince my dad that he's wrong about something, which is pretty similar to me. I like to think that I'm a little bit more flexible, but that might just be the hubris of being me and assuming that I'm more flexible. So, yeah.
Where did you go to school?
So I went to elementary school at a school called Warren Elementary. And I went to a high school called Warren High School. I grew up basically on the outskirts of Marietta, which is the biggest town in the area. It's like a population of like 13,000, so pretty small, but also not like one gas station kind of joint. but I went to the high school that was out in the country. So I have like, even though I grew up in like very close to the city and very like easily, like we drove into the city is the wrong, I mean, it's technically a city legally, but it's not what anyone who's from Boston would think of as a city. We went into the city um often. I got sort of the experience of more of like a farm kid who would go out to the like high school out in the country. But I enjoyed it. I liked my high school a lot.
What did you do after graduating?
So after I graduated, I went straight to college at Bowling Green State, which is in Northwest Ohio. I try to like make people understand about Ohio that Ohio is kind of like culturally split as far as regions of the United States go, because where I grew up is very much like Appalachia. Like those people would get along with people who are from like Kentucky, and they would feel like very home in a place like Kentucky or West Virginia or Tennessee. The town that I grew up on is across the river from West Virginia. But where I moved to was like half an hour from Toledo, which is on the border of Michigan. And that region of Ohio is way more like the Midwest. So those people would feel way more at home if you took them to like Illinois or Indiana, or even, you know, a place like Iowa would be a lot more culturally familiar, excuse me, to them. So, yeah.
What do you do for a living now?
So I am an administrative assistant. I guess I'm an executive assistant now. I've gotten enough vanity promotions. I can't remember my title anymore. Indeed. I like to say that I babysit surgeons for a living because I support 4 surgeons who are academic surgeons at Brigham and Women's. So, yeah.
Are you happy there?
I am happy there. I like the people that I support, and I appreciate the work they do. I think it adds a lot to the world, and I like to think by helping them that I have the opportunity to add something to the world as well. It's not what I feel personally like I want to be doing forever, just because I think it gets kind of tedious and bores me a little bit. But yeah, I was in retail management for a little while in between college and now, and retail management is like the opposite of boring, and I kind of like needed a little bit of boring. That was kind of my goal when I got this job, which I've been working at for about 3 years now. Um, but I think probably sometime in the near future, I'm gonna be kind of over boring.
Okay. So, what are some of the pieces of your identity that are most important to you?
So there are like there are a lot of moving parts to that, like I think there is for anyone. I appreciate a lot that I'm Appalachian and that I grew up working class. I find that that's something that I have in common sometimes the most infrequently with people around me here. So obviously, like lots of people in Boston are either middle class or they're totally disconnected from the experience of being something like Appalachian, even if they are working class. Like they've had a totally different experience than I did. Um, but yeah, so I would say being Appalachian and having been raised working class is one thing. Um, Definitely being queer is a big part of my identity, just in general. Um, And that probably forms like the bigger parts. I mean, being a nerd is always a big deal too. So I guess I can throw that in there. But yeah.
Do you have experiences where you've been excluded or where it's been harder to fit into communities because of who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say growing up in Appalachia and being like a little queer kid was not an easy experience. And I definitely did not fit in well there, in particular because I was not people's idea of like a stereotypical man, which is what I was supposed to be to live there. And so I think that probably is my biggest experience of exclusion. There's definitely some, like when I went to college, I went to a state college, which is obviously like not like ritzy, but most people who make it to a state college, I think it's safe to say, are middle class. Um, so a lot of the people around were middle class, and I often felt like there were times that I had trouble fitting in there because I like experienced life in a very like working class sort of way. I worked through most of my college, which like most of my peers did not. Or at least I guess I was separated from sort of like the people who lived on campus. I think a lot of like working class people that go to a place like a state college commute because they can't afford like student housing, or it's not worth it compared to the money they could save by not doing that. So there were some times that I certainly like felt my class as well, I think, in that period in my life.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what was your coming out like?
So that's, I mean, the exciting one. I think the biggest part of coming out for me initially was sort of being able to admit it to myself. So my family and my people when I was growing up, they were fundamentalists. Um and like very, very conservative. They were fundamentalist Protestants in like a sect of Christianity that tries to claim they don't have a denomination called the Church of Christ. And I, contrary to like many people's stories who will tell a story like this, I bought it like wholesale, part and parcel, believed every word of it for like most of my time growing up. I thought that it was all true. I believed everything about like hell and mysticism and like what it meant to be a sinner. I certainly believed that like gay people or queer people were like wrong and going to hell. I would say within the realm of the kind of conservatism I believed by the time I was a teenager, I was like progressive, but progressive is like a strange way to describe like what I thought. I was like, was kind of like a rabble rouser in my church growing up, but over things that would seem very like odd and trivially progressive to people. Like I didn't believe the earth was created in 7 literal days, which is like you couldn't find a person in Boston who believes that, no matter how religious. But that was like the fact that I didn't believe that was like skirting heresy. So there was like a lot of that. But anyway, having come up in that upbringing, I had like I was pretty reluctant internally to recognize that I wasn't straight. And so I didn't really come out to myself until I was about 17. It's like complicated to say that because it's not like there was never a situation where I like had feelings for a guy or experienced that I wasn't like normal for a man or whatever that would
Right.
indicate that I was queer. But just like I could never contextualize it in terms like, oh, I might be gay or oh, I might be queer. I like wouldn't let myself do that. So sometime around the time when I was 17, I like finally was just like basically like I have to accept this now. There's no option. And
Right.
I finally like told myself that I was gay. After that, because I'm like such a direct person, I basically just like made a list and started telling people. It was like 2 weeks after I was able to admit to myself that I was gay that I like told the first person. I think I told a couple of my friends, and then I told my mom, who I like hilariously, when I told my mother, I'll never forget because it's like my funniest coming out story. My mother was cutting my hair. I suppose it's a very Appalachian thing to do in the first place.
Honestly, no.
Okay. Well, my mother was cutting my hair, and for some reason I chose that as the time because I guess at that point in my life we didn't spend much time together. I was like 17. I was like a rebellious teenager. So I wasn't prone to spend a whole lot of time with her. So we were spending that time together. I was like, okay, we'll talk about it now. So I like sat there, I'm like sweating bullets, building up the courage. My mother had become less conservative over her life because leaving my dad wasn't exactly something you were allowed to do in fundamentalist Protestantism. So she already broke the rules. Might as well go all the way, I guess. So anyway, I sort of like sweating bullets, and finally I like worked up the courage, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, I have something to say." And she's like, "Okay," and I was like, "I'm gay." And I'll never forget, my mother pauses for a second and goes, "Is this a joke, Caleb?" And I just froze for a minute, and I was like, no, not a joke. And my mother goes, "And you thought this was a good time to tell me?" And I was like, I mean, I didn't think it was a bad time. And
I mean, as someone noted in the chat, she's holding a pair of scissors.
Yeah. They were clippers. It was less risk. I got buzz cuts. Okay. Yeah, you can give me side eye. That's fine. But yeah. So and then I recall she said something like, "How does that work?" referencing not what it sounds like it's referencing, but referencing the fact that indeed, referencing sort of that I was like a fundamentalist. So like, how does that work in that framework? Because she knew that I bought it part and parcel, and I remember just replying like, I don't really know yet. TBD. So she sort of, that was like the whole conversation. So like the haircut finished and I went and took a shower, and that was that. And then I remember that I always say, like, to her credit, because I tell this funny story about her and she sounds like a little bit bad, not quite what you want as a response coming out. Like, everyone, I think, when like their kid comes out to them, has like a period of time that it takes them to respond, and lots of people take months or years or days. My mother took overnight, and I remember the next morning she like came out of her bedroom in the morning, and I was getting ready for school or something, and she was like, "Can we talk about what you said yesterday?" Or she said, "Do you want to talk about what you said yesterday?" And I was like, not really, no. And she was like, "All right, well, I just want to say that I love you and I support you no matter what, and I'm sorry, it just surprised me. I didn't have any problem with it. I just didn't see it coming."
You just ambushed me as I'm trying to cut your hair.
Indeed. So, much to my mother's credit, she was a doll about it. So I have no major objection to the way that she handled it. And I told everyone, and there was pretty much that. I think very few people had a problem with it. A year later, I came out on Facebook, like a little bit before I came back from the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year. And when I did that, I ended up getting like formally removed from the church that I was a part of. So that was a little bit exciting.
You were excommunicated.
So, I mean, we didn't call it that, but yes, basically excommunicated. The reason that we wouldn't call it that is because that's a very Catholic thing to say, and we were like, it's from a very strong Protestant tradition, so they couldn't be bothered to use a Catholic word. But yeah, I mean, there's a formal process. Like, somebody came and talked to me at my house and told me that being gay was wrong, and I argued with them, and then they made me talk to like the church elders, who told me being gay was wrong, and a bunch of like insane stuff. If someone wants to hear like the long form of this story, I would love to tell it sometime, so I'm totally good with that, but this is just not the place for the entire story. But anyway, and then there was like a meeting with the entire congregation, which most people don't attend their own, but I was a little bit insane, so I did. So I like went to mine and sat there while they like excommunicated me and told everyone in the congregation they weren't allowed to have meals with me anymore or what have you. So yeah, that was
Wow.
probably the biggest adventure of my like coming out process. It wasn't well received everywhere. My brother in particular certainly didn't like it. My dad was a member of the church that like disfellowshipped me and went along with it. So there were some like not fun things, but it also wasn't horrible. In particular, my mother and my friends were very accepting. I feel like I actually made a lot of friends by coming out publicly because there are a lot of other gay people who are either like closeted or just don't talk about it a whole lot, or people who have left who then come to you and are like, oh, hey, me too. So I actually made a couple friends, I think, by coming out like that for people who are like, hey, me too.
Not to mention, I can see that, like putting that somewhere, especially with your then religious background, could be kind of the beacon that some people needed.
Yeah, indeed. I did over the years have a few like very strange interactions over it. I in college I like ran with a circle of Catholic folks and went to mass for a while in a series of strange events that are probably not worth relating here. Um, but as a result,
Color me intrigued.
um, as a result, sort of I encountered a few gay Catholics who were like very closeted and ashamed of it and were very like weird about the way they talked to me about it and would like hit me up for whatever. And I was like, this is not, no, like we're not doing this. um so
That
I
doesn't
had
sound
like a
sketchy.
few yeah, and a few like very strange interactions with people as the result of being sort of like a very openly queer person in an otherwise religious space, I would say. But by and large it was a good experience. I certainly like met a lot of people. I have had the opportunity to have conversations with like lots of interesting people about queerness because I existed in religious spaces. I like interviewed a Catholic priest about like the catechism's teaching on gender and how it fits in with like folks being transgender or gender non-conforming or non-binary or what have you, and sort of like had an interesting discussion about that for like a LGBTQ studies course that I was in when I was in college. So I had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of really cool stuff, in my opinion, in addition to sort of some of the strange encounters that I had.
Wow. Well, I did say there would be tea, and we've got plenty of it.
Indeed. It is here.
So, when did you join the Gamers?
I believe, if I'm not much mistaken, that it was a little over 2 years ago.
Okay. And how long have you been in leadership?
So I became a mid boss somewhere around a year ago, a little bit more. I think you and I became mid bosses at the same time, as you'll know, but as some in the audience may not. Um, and I think that was about a year ago. I was elected to be a final boss, so I don't know, a month back now, I think. So that's sort of been my journey there.
Now, what about BG makes the group a home for you?
I think it's a lot of things. I don't know that I really ever like. Also, another question that I wrote some version of initially that I haven't really thought about the answer to. I
Stop
think.
telling them that I stole your questions.
Fair enough. I'm hoping there are people here who have never seen one. All Oni's questions. No, no. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think people in the Gamers are very kind and also like very honest, which are traits that I admire a lot. Queerness is valued, which is something that I didn't have um, when I was growing up. So that's almost a novel experience for me. in a lot of ways. That's kind of strange to say that at 25 I'm having a novel experience of being accepted in a queer community. But I think otherwise, I like that there's always something going on. There are a lot of very clever people to match wits with. I like video games a lot, and there's a lot of video games going on. I mean, it's really what it comes down to ultimately is the people. I have fantastic friends that I've made from BG and friends yet to be made, if I can be cheesy, which I will be whether I'm allowed to be or not. So
Sappy.
I guess take that. But yeah, so I think those are the key things. It's really the like people and the kindness and the dedication to creating a safe and inclusive space that I think has really kept me around all this time. The willingness to change as well. I mean, the gamers were something very, very different when I joined 2 years ago, and what they were was very good. It wasn't bad, but they also recognized when there was a time to grow, and they did that. And they're good at seeing when they're not unchanging, which I feel like a lot of organizations try to be. And I appreciate that. I feel like I've existed in like 7 different versions of the gamers, and had the chance to hopefully stand by them all and support them. And I imagine if I stick around, I'll see 7 more versions as well. So
Mayhap. So, what are your goals for the future in the gamers?
Yeah. So I have nebulous answers and I have concrete answers. I think the nebulous answers are I want everyone who can feel included to feel included, right? Like I want it to be an inclusive environment, and right now we're still facing some struggles with that, I think, which we know and we actively work on, making sure that it's a place that everyone comes and can feel welcome. I hope it's already done. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not, but I worry sometimes that it might not be. So I think about that. So that's, I think, sort of my nebulous goal. I think I have some concrete goals in that I'm very interested and invested in building sort of like a more accountable leadership structure, which I think we're working on. We're updating the way that our leadership works, and I think it's been working very well. But I'm interested in like pushing that forward and figuring out what accountability looks like in the future for leaders, and sort of how to work with people on making sure that we are connecting decisions that get made with the people those decisions affect. Which I think is just a big challenge in any community, right? Like essentially every form of governing anything is bad and doesn't work very well. So you have to work within the framework of sort of like all of those structures for leadership and come up with a way to build something where you're making decisions that reflect what is good for the people that the decisions affect. And that is my like, I guess I went from a concrete goal to a nebulous goal, but the concrete goals I think I have are more about forming or leadership accountability.
Yeah. Which is totally fine. So now for something a little less serious.
Wonderful.
Let's talk about your interests. What have you been watching on TV?
The big one right now for everyone that I'll make the chat go crazy over, I hope, is The Mandalorian. Everybody's watching The Mandalorian. I haven't seen the most recent episode, so don't talk to me about it. I feel like it's an explosive topic. No, I'm extremely, extremely, extremely fond of Dave Filoni, who is one of the writers for the show, and I think Jon Favreau has done an excellent job of carrying the vision of those characters and making them interesting. Though I still say, like, if nothing else, this proves that Dave Filoni can't write an anti-hero, because The Mandalorian spent like 3 episodes as an anti-hero and then became a hero, and I find that hilarious, but not particularly unsettling, because I actually don't really like anti-heroes. So anyway, I went on a long rant about The Mandalorian. I'm watching The Mandalorian. I'm doing a rewatch of The Nanny right now. which is like
yes. Oh, so exciting.
It's like my maybe my fourth watch of it, I think. So I've seen it quite a bit. I just finished my first ever watch through of Schitt's Creek, and I feel like that show had no right to make me feel the emotions that it did. No right whatsoever. So yeah, I think
That's
those are
what
the
I
things that
hear.
I'm watching now.
Okay. All right. What are some of your favorite TV shows?
That is the hot button question. That's the the important one, I think. So my favorite, I like sitcoms a lot, and my favorite sitcom of all time is The Golden Girls, and I'm genuinely exceptionally fond of The Golden Girls. I've watched that like 25 times. If I have a second favorite
I
sitcom, it's
would.
probably The Nanny. Go ahead.
Okay. Because I would have ripped up your gay card.
But in other categories, my other favorite TV shows of all times are probably the two Star Wars animated shows, Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, which I think are exceptional and are also both heavily influenced by Dave Filoni, of whom
Okay.
I am very fond. I think that those shows do things that I feel like no other TV show has ever done. I think that Clone Wars develops prequel characters in a way that makes them real instead of the like cardboard versions that are shown in the prequels. And I just really appreciate Ahsoka Tano, who essentially like leapt out of Dave Filoni's mind and into my heart.
So the chat is asking your favorite Golden Girl. I think I actually know one or possibly two potentials. And because to me, you feel very much like either a Dorothy or a Sophia.
So it's funny because my favorite is Sophia, but if you ask me who I'm like, it's definitely Dorothy. I don't think I'm very much like Sophia at all. I mean, I like to think I could throw shade like her, but I can't. Uh, so I would be kidding myself if I said that I could. Yeah, but it's funny that you reference those two. So I love all of them, of course. Who doesn't? But yeah, definitely Sophia is my favorite. Picture it, Sicily, 1922, a young girl.
Also, Kester, we've got to fix that because you should at least watch one episode.
Trying to think what episode you even watch if you only watch one. I don't know that I know. I feel like there are so many good ones. Not the pilot.
I mean, the pilot has a gay character in it.
He's such a stereotype, though. You can understand how they decided not to run with that. Not that he's not a delight. He is.
All right. Do you have a favorite movie or movies? I know you don't like to sit still and watch movies for too long.
I mean, my favorite is Star Wars, naturally. All of them, I would say. Maybe not all of them. That will get me a bad rap in chat. A lot of them. Let's just say a lot of them are tied for my favorite. I'm also exceptionally fond of Kubo and the Two Strings. So that gets up there as well.
Okay. Now, what is in your gameplay backlog?
Ooh, what's in my backlog? So probably there is a game called Greedfall that I really want to play that my PC can't quite handle in the quality that I would like it to handle. So I would say it's in my backlog, but it's kind of stuck there until I get an upgrade at least. I'm trying to think what is playable in my backlog. I would like to get to Fire Emblem soon. So I played most of the game that was just titled Fire Emblem in English at some point on a Game Boy SP. Is that the right console? I think Game Boy Advance SP. And
yeah, probably.
the data got inexplicably erased as I was like 3 fights from the end. So I would like to replay that and then probably get into some of the other Fire Emblem stuff. I'm playing StarCraft right now to eventually play through the story campaign for StarCraft 2. So I guess StarCraft 2 is in my backlog as well. Maybe some Diablo 3. I've gotten a Blizzard obsession that I've caught from my playing of Heroes of the Storm. So going back through and catching some of those. So yeah.
Okay. Now, what do you think, in your estimation, is probably the best video game ever, pants down?
Pants down. Probably Knights of the Old Republic is my favorite. I don't know if I can say it's the best because it's so outdated now that it feels like it almost can't be the best, but in my heart, it will always be the best. Knights of the Old Republic was the first game I ever played that I was basically like, holy shit, this is like what gaming can do. Like it broke my brain. And I won't give it away because I imagine there are people who might yet play that game, even though I know it's like 15 to 20 years old, somewhere in that. So it's like, seems like not wrong to spoil it. I still don't want to spoil it, but when the twist occurs in that game, it broke my brain. And that's sort of like what BioWare does in their games, right? Is have sort of like a twist in the fourth act, I suppose, probably usually, that changes sort of everything you've played up to that point. But the one in Knights of the Old Republic, I think really like, I don't know if it originated it, but it feels like it was probably the original twist. And I loved it. Yeah. I'll just say that.
Okay. The chat is asking your favorite and least favorite HOTS characters.
So I have kind of a toss up for my favorite right now, because my favorite is obviously going to be who I'm best at, in the context of HOTS, because the most fun to play is when you like feel like a god, right? In any game, especially multiplayer games. So probably Cassia and Anduin are my favorites. My least favorite, far and away, and this will come as no shock to anyone who has played HOTS with me ever, is Illidan. I know Illidan is not broken because he can be countered, and I know because I've played him enough, but when you go against Illidan, particularly when you haven't drafted his counters, Illidan feels so broken, and I feel like I cannot do anything to escape him, which is probably just me being bad, honestly, but it still hurts.
Oh, that's a shame.
So yeah.
All right. That covers all the questions I had for you this evening.
Perfect.
So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Caleb, for agreeing to have me do this to you. Thank you, Zach, for putting this together, or at least holding us up. Thank you to the mods, or leadership now, I suppose. And don't forget, next Friday will be our 24-hour charity marathon stream, starting at 7 p.m. Don't miss it. Do you have anything you want to say?
No, just thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Take care, everyone.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Mwah.